Saints and Patriots, Apostle Claver, T. Kamal Imani of RagingElePhantsRadio.com, the rebellious voice of Texas Liberty. And here we are again, another night of the Texas Nationalist Movement's Legislative Action Workshop. And tonight's going to be another very valuable use of your time, at least for the next hour or so. Teresa Beckmeyer of the Freedom Caucus, the Republican Freedom Caucus under the Pink Dome, is going to be our guest. Get ready to ask your questions. It's very easy to do that. At the bottom of your video screen, device screen, you will see a button that says Q&A. If you have any questions for Teresa, feel free to enter them in that Q&A window. We'll be monitoring that window. And the chat room, you see there's a button there also right next to Q&A for the chat room. Not only can you compose a question in the chat room, but you can interact with the other conference attendees. Now, don't think this is the last one of the Legislative Action Workshop, the last session. No, we have others that are scheduled and are being scheduled. And how you sign up for the one, for instance, on January the 3rd for Jonathan the Big Stick Sticklin, is you go to tnm.me/TNMLAW, TNM Law for Legislative Action Workshop, and you sign up to reserve your conference seat. For each one of these conversations, a unique URL link is created and sent to you via email. And that's how, just like tonight, you're able to get into the conference room. So Teresa is not the last special guest that we have for this particular project. We still have to lock down State Representative Steve Toth as well, and a couple of others that are in the pipeline. They have a conversation with you and for you. Don't forget the videos are posted at tnm.me. We've had conversations with political office holders, activists, and influencers from right here in the state of Texas, and indeed internationally, beginning on last Friday. There's a lot of content at tnm.me/TNM Law. Go look at any of those videos, any of the sessions that you missed. The videos are archived. Feel free to take clips from it. Certainly feel free to share it. And finally, download the Raging Elephants radio app. That's the best way to get rid of the big tech interference and censorship, to get to you directly, to give you the Texas news and information that you need to be a better informed Texas Liberty-driven voter. The RER app, trustworthy news, information, and commentary from a Liberty perspective. Texas 24/7, 365. Okay, let's go to Teresa. Teresa of the Freedom Caucus, and that means so much because the Freedom Caucus has matured to the point where they need someone to be their executive director, to sort of handle the day-to-day affairs and to interact with the constituents of the Freedom Caucus. Teresa Beckmeyer, welcome to the Legislative Action Workshop for 2019.
Hello, Claver. I'm not exactly their executive director. I am their director for grassroots engagement. So,
and now, where are you based out of? Where are you based out of, Teresa?
I'm out in West Texas, but I'm about to be moving to Austin for the session, so I will be down there permanently for the next few months.
How did the caucus start? When and where?
About the middle of last session, 12 guys. They had been working together for the couple sessions before that, and they had been kicking around the idea about coming together to form a caucus, but it never really came together until the middle of last session. And they were very successful in a lot of things for being together such a short amount of time.
Who was the brainchild? Who was the great genius that came up with this?
Well, I don't think there was any one person. I think that there were 12 of them.
Right.
I'll just sort of let y'all know who they were. There's 3 reps that I consider them the rural representatives. We have Kyle Biederman out of Fredericksburg, Matt Schaefer out of Tyler, and Representative Mike Lang out of the Granbury, Eastland, Cisco area. And then you have two people that are out of the Houston area, Representative Valerie Swanson Representative Briscoe Kane, and then the remaining members were all from the DFW area. Matt Rinaldi, Representative Rinaldi, Representative Jeff Leach of Plano, Representative Tony Tenderholt of Arlington, let's see, Jonathan Stickland, of course, Representative Matt Krause, Representative Bill Zedler, and Matt Shaheen. So those are the 12 guys, and like I said, there were a lot of meetings, a lot of discussions about how to go about this, and they all just sort of came together and decided to do this. They have an executive committee. Representative Schaefer is the chairman of the Freedom Caucus, and so to get the Freedom Caucus, to become a member of the Freedom Caucus is by invitation only. Invitation only.
Whoa. And only in the House, right? It hasn't expanded to the other chamber, right? It has not as of yet. They have to do their own thing if they're going to do their own thing in the Senate.
Yes, it's only in the House.
And before we go forward, Teresa, let's talk about the past, the 2018 general midterm. Your general thoughts, assessment of the outcome from November the 6th. And perhaps there's a general sentiment that the caucus has expressed since November the 6th.
Well, of course, everybody is not happy that Matt Rinaldi didn't win re-election, of course, because he was a very integral part of the Freedom Caucus. And so we're very unhappy about that. But and overall, like everybody else, we see that there's a lot of work that needs to be done. And we're all going to need to get busy and make sure that 2020 looks good for all of us. So.
Well, let's move to 2019. I know you're anxious to talk about that. The top of the Freedom Caucus's agenda, Teresa, what do you think they want to achieve first and foremost above all else?
Well, I think I went around in September, and I probably talked to a lot of y'all. I went around been going around all over the state, collecting information from the grassroots about what priorities they wanted the Freedom Caucus to take up. And pretty much they are in line with what they had last year. And I can tell you last year, their priorities, we had the sanctity of life, the freedom of religion, speech, and conscience, the right to keep and bear arms, prevent illegal immigration, fiscal restraint and budget reform, education reform, public safety and criminal justice, and government ethics reforms. And just based on the information that I gathered, I'm expecting the priorities to be pretty much in line with that, with what we worked on. Because, and if you look at the Republican priorities, they're pretty much in line with that too. So our grassroots and the conservative movement, they're all pretty much speaking the same thing. I don't care if you go to the Tea parties, to just the groups of people, the Republican parties, the Republican women, pretty much the conservatives want those priorities, is what I'm finding. Representative Stickland has already filed the constitutional carry bill. And I'm sure that, well, I'm not sure, Tony Tenderholt will probably have the abolish abortion bill again. Those are just some things, that Representative Biederman has filed the bill about to stop the in-state tuition for illegal, for Dreamers. He's filed that bill. So we're going to see probably a lot of the same type conservative legislation out of the Freedom Caucus members that we have seen in the past.
Have they given you a general sense of how they feel about the new presumptive speaker coming in, Dennis Bonnen?
Of course, as you probably know, all of the Freedom Caucus members, with the exception of Jonathan Stickland, supported Dennis Bonnen as speaker. Now, they did not come out as the Freedom Caucus and endorse the speaker. They did this individually. Okay, so that's really important to understand that. What I'm hearing, everybody is hopeful, and they're looking forward to working with Representative Bonnen. They've had a lot of discussions with him, and they're feeling positive about what they're hearing from him.
Well, we certainly need some changes on how the House of Representatives is run. Is there any concentration this year, as there was in the last session, over the rules, how bills can eventually get to the floor?
I haven't heard much discussion about the rules. I haven't been in those discussions.
Because
So
it was a big first day of the session in 2017. As you remember, Teresa, it was a big knockdown, drag out, and some stunning revelations from the back microphone during that scrap over the rules. Because when the Freedom Caucus is operating as a minority but even less so than even the Democrats, the rules and how they're able to stop the bad stuff and able to hopefully push the good stuff forward is extremely critical. And then, of course, the rules were used to protect the power of the speaker's gavel in previous sessions. Perhaps with a new speaker, Representative Bonin won't try and put so much dynamite into the gavel and keep so much control in the speaker's office. Perhaps a better distribution of power, even through the committee chairs. Your thoughts, Teresa?
Well, he has that he wants the House to be led. And so I guess we'll all have to wait and see, as committee chair positions come out. I guess we'll see what's going on with that. And, the job of the speaker is it's to be fair and let the House operate. And I guess when the session opens and we do go through the rules and all that, we'll be able to tell a lot right there, sort of. So I guess all of us are going to have to wait and see what happens.
I want to remind everyone.
Nice if we had a crystal ball.
Teresa Beckmeyer is my guest. She's with the Freedom Caucus of the Republican Party under the Pink Dome, the Texas House of Representatives. And it was good news to hear that Teresa was going to be working with the Freedom Caucus. Her sterling reputation as a grassroots activist, organizer, and influencer certainly precedes her. Known Teresa for quite some time and has been an impressive worker within the Liberty Movement now for I guess before the Tea Party movement, Teresa. And working with the Freedom Caucus, I think the wise question perhaps is to turn the reins loose and perhaps tell us what you think the grassroots activist of Texas really needs to know, or the Freedom Caucus wants them to know, going into this very critical and what I think is going to be explosive session for 2019. Teresa.
That's a good question. I know that y'all have been talking all week about working in the legislature, and the Freedom Caucus members, when they came together, when the caucus formed, they came together as a caucus. That means that they don't just represent their districts any longer. The caucus represents people across the state. So as bills and things are going through, like with any other House member, the grassroots needs to be paying attention to what the Freedom Caucus is doing. And the Freedom Caucus needs to hear from you. Just because these are our guys and they're conservative and everything, that does not mean that we just turn them loose. We still need to be watching what they do, and we need to be conversing with them. And that doesn't mean that we need to be beating them over the head, for something that they might do. I know there were some issues last year that came up, and they were getting beat up on things that weren't even coming to the House floor. You don't want to make enemies out of your legislators, because then you're less likely to get help from them. And this is any legislator. You need to go in and talk to your legislators respectfully and know your issue. Like I said, I don't know what they would want to tell the grassroots about what's coming. I think everybody with the speaker, I think all of us are just sort of wondering what's going to happen, I guess, and like I said a while ago, it'd be so nice if we had a crystal ball so that we could see what's going to happen in the future. All of us this is new territory with Joe Strauss gone. I mean, this is what I'm getting from everybody. When I'm talking to the grassroots or grassroots leaders, or when I'm talking to the staff down there in the House, or even the Freedom Caucus members or non-Freedom Caucus members, everybody is just in a state of just it's the unknown. Just everybody's waiting to see what's going to happen, you know.
Well, and I want to remind all the attendees, there's a Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. If you have some questions for Teresa, you don't have to wait until the end of our conversation. You can post those questions in the Q&A window. I'm looking at it right about now. And you guys can ask Teresa any questions that you would like. And you said communicate with the Freedom Caucus, Teresa. Is there going to be a central way to get in contact with the members of the caucus, or are we going to have to connect with them individually? Can we connect to them in the collective?
Well, the best way to do that is through me. I'm going to be available. I am the liaison for the grassroots. I will be handling a lot of the grassroots requests, speaking to the grassroots at events and things like that. So yeah, the best way is probably to get, talk to me, and I can help you with that. And you can always, you don't have to go through me, other than that, you would have to just probably contact them individually. Because, the Freedom Caucus, a caucus is just a group of people that are working together. So just working together, unless there's not a central office. They don't have an office yet. We're not to that point. So if you want to just get together with them collectively, I would think the best way would be just to try to talk to me, and then I could see how we could do that.
Have they created a Facebook page or something like that, Teresa?
Yes, there is a Facebook page, Texas Freedom Caucus. It'd be great if you'd go join that. We have quite a few followers on that. They also have a Twitter, and it's at Freedom for Texas.
At Freedom for Texas, the number 4?
No, it's at TX Freedom Caucus. It's the @ sign. The TX Freedom Caucus is the Twitter, and they're more active individually than the actual Twitter account is on Twitter. But I think once the session starts up, it'll probably pick up. Both of the Facebook and the Twitter will.
Got a couple of comments here for you, Teresa. One question from James. Jeff Leach recently announced that he would no longer be part of the Freedom Caucus. How does that affect the caucus and the House generally? Your thoughts, Teresa Beckmeyer?
I don't think it's going to be, the Freedom Caucus is, like I said, it's by invitation only, and people can leave the Freedom Caucus when they feel like, they can work on their own in the same way that they can through the caucus. And I think that's sort of what happened with Representative Leach. I don't think it will have that big of an impact on the Freedom Caucus. We should have some other new members next session. And we could have some that have already been down there, some representatives that could be joining, So I don't think it'll have that big of an effect on the Freedom Caucus.
Just a follow-up on Jeff Leach leaving the Freedom Caucus. I think it's fair to say that the members of the Freedom Caucus, who generally have the highest scores when it comes to conservatism and voting in a liberty-minded way, weren't, and perhaps still are, not the most popular of the state representatives amongst the entire 150 members. And in order for them to stop some of the most rhinoceros of the efforts in previous sessions, especially in 15 and 17, they had to use the rules and the procedures to gum up the works in order to protect our liberties from being abridged even further. And if you listen to the establishment representatives and the lobbyists around the ATX and the Pink Dome, for lack of a better term, they would call the Freedom Caucus, the troublemakers, the flamethrowers, or whatever, while they're, to many of us out here in the sticks, in the streets, on the asphalt, they're true heroes, legislative heroes. Is that, with the departure of Strauss, the departure of Cook, and many of the other Straussians that have populated the Pink Dome since 2009 and even before then, do you think that sort of reputation, that type of glossing of the Freedom Caucus has subsided? Maybe it'll be looked at a little bit differently. They were sort of considered the outlaws and not the good guys by the establishment. Can that opinion be changed of those guys, of the representatives that have been there for so long and don't necessarily travel in the same circles that you and I travel in, Teresa?
So, okay, so you're asking if the Freedom Caucus, they're going to look more favorably on the Freedom Caucus now that Strauss and them are gone and they no longer have to buck them? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, their reputation. They were stiff-armed so much by the establishment.
Right.
They were considered to be outlaws. They were considered to be the guys in the black hats. To us, we looked upon them 180 degrees opposite from that. We looked at them as legislative heroes that were trying to actually enact the GOP platform. And because of that, because of how they were perceived, how they were looked upon by the Straussian regime, I would hope that would change and they would be, as a caucus, more effective with more doors open to them and not getting stiff-armed so much.
Well, I think that will have to do with, this may sound sort of, I don't know, I think that'll have to do with how well the platform issues are presented to the legislators and how good a job the RPT does of selling the platform issues, because the Freedom Caucus is not going to leave their principles. So if we get, with this new regime comes in and we aren't getting the pro-life bills to the floor, we aren't getting the conservative legislation to the floor, the Freedom Caucus isn't going to stop doing their job. So I guess it all depends on how this new leadership, how they work. And, that remains to be seen. They're not, like I said, they're not going to leave their principles. Just because.
Well, they were very effective. Briscoe, Kane, especially Matt Schaefer in the last session, always the big stick. Matt Rinaldi was such a powerful force, member of the brain trust of the Freedom Caucus in 2015 and 2017. They were extremely effective and instrumental in exposing the type of shenanigans that go on for 140 days that have been hidden or opaque, even with media buzzing all around the Pink Dome. The activities are what goes on behind, and the shenanigans that actually goes on the floor in the process. They were extremely instrumental. Let's hope, Teresa, this time they can be less focused on illustrating or shining a spotlight on the wrongdoing or the shenanigans or the nefarious proceedings, if you will, process and rules that are applied, or the breaking of the rules in some instances. And they don't have to focus on that so much. They were really good at it, but this time be much more effective in getting that liberty-minded legislation to the floor and to the governor's desk. Hopefully that can be the change from the last 3 sessions. Teresa, go ahead.
And there is hope for that. There is hope for that. When Representative Bonin was talking about he wanted this to be a member-led House, and he agreed that they needed new parliamentarians, he put a committee together, and actually one of the Freedom Caucus members was on that committee. It was Representative Krause, and to pick the new parliamentarians. And that group of men or representatives that he chose they were from all parts of the House. So that was a really good sign that he wasn't just staying with certain members to pick those parliamentarians. He was allowing everybody to have a voice. So all we can hope is that what we're seeing is going to continue into the session. And like I say, we're not going to know until we get into the session and see what he does, we can go on what he's saying, and he's saying good things now.
It begins January the 8th, 2019. The first order of business will be the election of the Speaker of the House. Teresa, I want to address a comment that was made by Brian in the chat room. He says, my former representative was Don Huffines. Actually, he would be your former state senator, Brian. And he continues, he lost in the last election to a Democrat, ? No way. That's voter fraud. Money from outside the state is pouring in for Democrats, making Texas blue by way of voter fraud. Brian, I got to tell you, man, you should be watching or listening to my program almost on a daily basis, 12 noon Texas time at Raging Elephants Radio, because we have done extensive analysis of the vote tally here in Texas and continue to do so. The drill down is so deep, we haven't finished creating all the content necessary to reveal all the things that we've been able to uncover just by studying the tally of numbers. And I'm going to tell you, there is no way in the world that much voter fraud took place. There's just no way. It would be too obvious. The numbers show that since 2010, the high water mark of the GOP during the Tea Party election, in which in 2011, the balance in the House went from 76-74 Republican to 101-49 Republican. The Republicans have lost 17 seats since that high water mark. Some of it can be attributed to redistricting. Joe Strauss and Kel Seliger didn't do us any favors in redrawing the lines in 2012, district lines in 2012. But a lot of it has to do with the GOP not doing its job in growing the conservative voting base. A lot of it has to do with serious demographic changes, which many of you here on this conference became familiar with me going across the state and talking about the demographic changes and the challenges for candidates, for campaigns and the party to broaden out the voting base through racial diversity, which is not being done. And it's coming to bite the Republicans in the derriere. In 2018 is a prime example. Lost 12 seats so far. I mean, the dust hasn't really settled yet. Lost 12 seats in the 2018 midterm. They went heavy with women. They're playing hard on the gender war. And since the 2010 election, Democrats have increased their voter turnout by over 90%. Republicans have increased theirs too by 40 to 45%. But the growth of the number of voters by Democrats in Texas, you can't have that much fraud. It would be so obvious it could be found. I think it is fecklessness on the part of the party nationally, statewide, and certainly the party chairs and executive committees of the Texas Big Six major counties in the RGV. Just an absolute fecklessness, a dereliction of duty, as if they don't know what they're doing, their resources and priorities being pointed in the wrong direction. And they don't get their act together here in this election cycle, yeah, Texas could turn blue. But this level of voter fraud, no way, no how. You just don't gain 2 million votes through voter fraud over an 8-year period. You just can't do that. So I know that a lot of Texans are concerned about the outcome and the growth of votes or the potential of voter fraud, but not that much. You can't create that much voter fraud in broad daylight across the state in the numbers that they produced. Beto O'Rourke received more votes than Barack Hussein Obama. That's just party growth. The money had a lot to do with it. The $80 million had a lot to do with it. But an ineffective party, an unprepared party, an unprepared campaign. We've heard from too many consultants and too many candidates and campaign managers that said they just didn't anticipate this many people coming out and vote. And they get paid to understand and know these things. Why are they professionals? Why are they getting paid so much? And election cycle after election cycle, these turnout numbers by the Democrats are surprising them. They're getting surprised by them, shocked by them, and the power of the Republicans is being reduced, and the power of the leftist, statist, anti-Christian Democrats are increasing, and the party within the state needs to get its act together. Teresa, maybe you have some thoughts on that.
I agree that I think all of us, not just the RPT, has been surprised at the voter turnout in the Democrats, but I also believe that we have to get the Republican voters to turn out. That is a huge issue.
Well, where are they, Teresa? This is a good conversation for us to have because you are a grassroots activist and influencer. You're in charge of being the liaison to the Texas Liberty Movement, grassroots liberty movement here in Texas. I don't think it was a focus of Republicans not turning out, because if you look at the general election cycle, the number of Republicans that voted in the general election cycle, presidential election cycle of 2016, there was only a 600,000 vote drop off from a presidential cycle to a midterm. Right. And usually it's a 45% drop off, sometimes 60 to 70% drop off presidential election cycle to midterm. Republicans showed up. Democrats just simply produced more voters since 2010. Your thoughts, Teresa?
Well, I agree with that. I think, yeah, they did. They were registering people, and yeah, I agree with what you just said about the Democrats. They were working very hard.
Back to the agenda of the Freedom Caucus for the 2019 legislative session. What does as the liaison to the grassroots of the Liberty Movement here in Texas, Teresa, and I'm so happy that you are, what do they want the most? If they've given you a mandate to take to the grassroots of Texas, the base of the GOP, they're true supporters, and as you stated, a caucus now, their statewide constituents, what message do they want you to take to us?
They want you to know that one of their main tenets of the caucus is to represent the grassroots. So, when you're in Austin, a lot of times with legislators, you don't hear them speak much about the grassroots, if at all. But that is one of the main things. The focus of the caucus is to be the voice of the conservative grassroots of Texas. And their mission is amazing. And it's on their website. If you go at freedomfortexas.com and read their mission, they believe in our unalienable rights, and they believe that they are down there to fight for those rights. They want to amplify the voice of liberty-minded grassroots Texans. They want to protect life and strengthen families and defend the U.S. and Texas Bill of Rights, and to restrain government and revitalize personal and economic freedoms in the state of Texas. And these are the guys we need down there fighting for us. We are very fortunate to have them in our state working for the grassroots.
I wish they would broaden out their focus and their activism. Maybe they are, Teresa. I don't know. I mean, you're more plugged into the grassroots, but they have so much power and they are so impressive. And the IQ of those guys. I mean, losing Ronaldo may be out of office, but I would suspect that he's going to stay in contact with the big stick and Briscoe for sure. And with Matt, Matt Rinaldi is just so smart. And you got the other three Matts, Schaefer, Shaheen, and Krause. There's such an impressive collection of men and women. As freshmen, Briscoe Kane and Valerie Swanson coming in out of the Houston area where there was such a dearth of liberty representation out of H-Town and Harris County. Briscoe, with his legal background, he may have a baby face, but he's a baby face assassin, and he was so instrumental. And it grades out to be, as a freshman, the most conservative, outdoing the big stick and outdoing Rinaldi. Their skill sets are so broad. I hope that they can broaden out their bandwidth and help with such things as, getting more liberty-driven candidates on the ballot, and getting them more prepared for knockdown, drag-out primaries and general elections, especially now that we see the Democrats really have muscled up over the last 3 election cycles. And being more influential on a statewide basis. I wish, as a caucus, they would be more adventuresome, more aggressive in going into precincts of color, going where they're not going to get a single vote because they're going to be campaigning and doing engagement outside of their districts, but for the survival of the Texas Constitution, for the survival of any vestiges of liberty that we have left. I believe these are operations that they are going to have to implement, programs and campaigns that they're going to have to implement. Is it any way possible we can lobby them to go beyond beyond the legislative agenda, but help us organize in the grassroots, recruiting candidates, teaching how to raise funds, getting some, alliances together and slates together and doing more of the Shark Tanks to empower and grow and strengthen the Freedom Caucus. Got to have more than a dozen people, got to have more than 24 people. That Freedom Caucus should be stronger than that. And we can really make Texas more like Texas. Your thoughts on them expanding their influence beyond just what goes on under the pink dome? Teresa.
Right. I think those are a lot of good suggestions, and I welcome that kind of input. If people want to send that to me, you can send it to info@freedomfortexas.com. Yeah, I agree. Yes, we need to do some of that. And they're new. This is a new caucus. It's not even a year old yet. Well, not even 2 years old. It started in the middle, so it's about 18 months, I guess, old, almost 2 years old. So they're learning, and I'm sure that they will. I've heard some, talk, not, just in passing about some of this kind of stuff. So yeah, I agree with you, and I welcome input on that. That's what my job is to take what the grassroots has to say and package it and talk to the Freedom Caucus members about it.
How much traveling are you going to have to do, Teresa, in session and out of session?
I've been traveling a lot for the past few months. In session, the first couple months, I'll probably still travel quite a bit, but after that, it will probably slow down because, as you know, the days get longer and there'll be less time for it. So I've been traveling
much more hectic, much more chaotic, much more intense, yes. Much more emotional. Yes. The fever and fervor elevates every day. When you get towards sine die, the 140th day, you don't have a lot of friends left under the pink dome.
No. And it's going so fast too. It's hard to keep up with all of it.
Traveling a lot, Teresa. I'm sure you're being received very well. Are you going through the usual Tea Party tour, if you will, talking to folks?
I've been speaking to all kinds of groups. I went with Rachel Malone quite a bit. We awesome. We teamed up. I went to a bunch of her events with her, and I spoke, and then she would speak. So I've been to just Republican groups. I've been to Republican women. I've been to Tea Party groups. I've gone to several college groups, which that's what I like. And as you know, I've been doing this for a long time, even before I started working for the Freedom Caucus. My focus has always been bringing everyone together, because if we can all get together, we can accomplish so much more. And that's what I feel that we need to do, take our message to everybody.
What's the sentiment out there, Teresa? Because, as you know, I would be on the road 16 out of 31 days in a month sometimes, crisscrossing the nation and certainly the state, talking about what we needed to do in order to continue winning elections here in Texas. The sentiment when you're out there traveling, especially after the November 8 midterms and the outcome here in Texas, when you're going, especially to the Republican women's clubs, what is the sentiment? Is there still a buoyancy, or do they seem to be down, a little bit dour, a little bit pessimistic? Your
Well,
gauge, your reading, your thermometer on the grassroots.
well, it's really, I'll tell you, I love going and talking to people. I just love it because, first of all, the grassroots of Texas, I don't care where they are. I don't care if they're in Republican Party, Republican women, Tea Party, whatever. They're awesome, the conservative grassroots. But when you go in to some of these groups, a lot of them, they've heard of the Freedom Caucus, but they really don't know what they've done. You know, they've just heard about it. And they'll sort of be down a little bit when you go in, but once I tell them about the Freedom Caucus and all the great legislation that they helped get passed and all that, these people get so excited and so filled with hope, and they are ready to go to work. And so it's really exciting to see that, you know, that this group of guys and girls and gals, they are inspiring people to get up and go to work. And I know you've been involved in this in a long time. And when you get really tired and you're like, oh, we just have to keep fighting this battle. But what I'm seeing is when I'm telling people, like, there's this group of people down there and they are actually fighting for you. They're trying to get things passed that you believe in, and they're being successful in it. That's the important thing. They are being successful. It's amazing how excited people get.
Okay, and I don't mean this to be disparaging at all, Teresa, but do you find that when you go and you address the various groups throughout the state, that they seem to have a lack of knowledge what goes on in state politics, what goes on in Austin? I would think that the Freedom Caucus, the celebrity of it, would already be known before you walked in. But I think some of us who are political junkies, we just think everybody is plugged in woke like we are, and they're not. Do you find in your travels, like I have, that a lot of our saints and patriots who know what they want and know what needs to be done, but there seems to be an absolute shortage of knowledge and information to them, that they're not up to speed on what's being done, not only by the Freedom Caucus, but generally by Austin, just generally, period.
Right. Yes. And you know, before I worked for the Freedom Caucus, I had Lone Star Voice. And that was the purpose of Lone Star Voice, because I saw a need for exactly what you're talking about. Because I used to be one of those people. I wanted to be involved, but I didn't know how. I really didn't even know what Austin did. I knew there was a Capitol down there, but I really didn't know what they did down there. And I still see that. Just in our day and age, everybody's watching Fox News or they're on Facebook, and they're just getting the very surface level of how things work.
Well, they're getting inundated with the national news, because big corporate media, that's their business model. And, you know, they want to get audience on a national, international basis. So getting down into the nook and crannies of state politics, especially a state as powerful as Texas, they spend no resources on it. They send one or two correspondents to the state that's supposed to cover, you know, on a state that has a number 8 size economy on the planet and is bigger than most G20 and G8 countries. You're not going to be able to cover it. 2 correspondents. The thing that I like to say, Teresa, I want to get your thoughts on this. You know, as a political talk program host, I'm up against Rush and Sean and Laura and, Mark Levin and Dr. Savage and Alex Jones, all these guys, and Beck and all of them. And I say this, whatever Rush is talking about, whatever Sean is talking about, you and I can probably create an opinion, an articulate opinion on that subject. But how many of them could express a cogent thought, opinion on what's going on in Texas? They just don't know. And so with Lone Star Voice or with RER, we're trying to address that dearth of information, that media absence especially from a liberty perspective when it comes to Texas. I really believe that our efforts electorally from a liberty perspective are being harmed because of the lack of information that's available or being disseminated to them. Your response, Teresa?
Well, you know, I'm sitting here thinking about this while you're talking. You look at every day, we are bombarded with information, especially when it comes to politics. You don't know, the average person out here does not know who they can trust. It's just like, you know, you mentioned all those talk show hosts, and then you have all the TV media, and then you have all the online media. You know, the average person that's not a political junkie like all of us are, they don't know who they can trust. And what I find it's just like when you're campaigning, they tell you, you know, you're supposed to touch the people to vote for you so many times, a personal touch, not literally touching on, but, you know, a card, a letter, a phone call, whatever. I just find when I go and I actually talk to people face to face, then they're like, oh, okay, you're telling me the truth. And I think that's what's part of the problem today, is that people just do not know who they can trust. And so they don't really, because of that, they don't key in on things. They're not digging into it because they just don't know who they can trust and who they can't. I think that's part of the problem.
Well, when the final number of the Freedom Caucus is finalized for the 2019 session, I think I can speak with some level of certainty that you can trust the cats and the guys and gals in the Freedom Caucus. Teresa, here's a question from Steve in Sugar Land, and I think I know what the answer is based on your comments earlier in our conversation. How receptive are the members of the Freedom Caucus to people outside of their district? If they got a ton of calls on a specific issue from all over the state, would they listen? That's from Steve in Sugar Land, and he sent that in via email.
Yes, they will listen. Like I said earlier, once they came together as the Freedom Caucus, then they, you know, that's statewide. So yes, they will listen. And if you have an issue, please don't hesitate to reach out to me. It's info@freedomfortexas.com. If I start getting a lot of email on certain subjects, I will make sure that I bring it up to them also. So yes, they will listen.
You're sort of new on the job, Teresa, but you are in the know. James, in the Q&A window, what are the top 3 accomplishments of the Texas Freedom Caucus in the last session of the legislature? You may want to think of some of those, Teresa. I think we talked about it in general terms earlier. You know, James, a lot of things the Freedom Caucus was able to do, being a minority in the lower chamber of the Texas Legislature, a lot of the things they were able to do had to do with exposing the stuff that goes on, getting on camera, challenging the speaker, the rules that were being broken, misinterpreted, the actions that were being taken to stop good legislation from getting to the floor. Let's say, for instance, the bathroom bill or the abortion ban or other religious freedom legislation, constitutional carry, things like that, exposing how those fantastic bills, which were legislative priorities in the Texas GOP platform, were being thwarted, and showing exactly how the leadership performed. I think it was instrumental in getting Strauss to finally quit, finally chased him out, and you know, and stopping some of the Democratic-led initiatives from being halted as well. Teresa, your contribution to answer the question about their accomplishments in 2017, the first session in which they were actually a formal caucus.
Right. Well, besides that, I guess one of the biggest things that they were able to do was to get the sanctuary cities legislation in place. If you don't know how that happened, there was Senator Charles Perry had a bill over in the Senate that was a very strong sanctuary cities bill. It passed through the Senate. When it came over to the House and went to the State Affairs Committee, all the stuff in the bill that made it strong was stripped out. They sent it to the floor in its weakened form, and Representative Schaefer was able to get all of the strong language put back into the bill, and it was passed. And if you've been reading the news the last 2 weeks, San Antonio just had a situation where their police down there allowed some illegal aliens, and they were using San Antonio as a sanctuary city, going against that state law. And now the AG, Ken Paxton, is filing against them based on that law that was passed.
Yeah,
so
he
that was
filed a lawsuit. Yeah, that was huge.
That's a huge piece of legislation. I mean, and it is the strongest sanctuary cities bill in the United States, and that was Freedom Caucus.
Upheld by the Fifth Circuit, by the way.
Yes, and the other really big thing they did is this whole process by which we have just elected the candidate for speaker out of the Republican caucus. If you have been involved in Texas state politics over the last few sessions, when Speaker Strauss, when it would come time for him to get reelected, other people would try to run, and it was always just sort of chaotic. And people would end up running, and then they'd drop out, and you would hear rumors about how the Republican caucus would meet, and it would just be this big, just chaotic mess, and nobody could figure out who was doing what. Well, whenever Speaker Strauss said that he was going to retire, the Freedom Caucus members started looking at the bylaws of the Republican caucus. And they knew that in the RPT platform, the delegates had put in there that they wanted the candidate for the Republican candidate to come out of the Republican caucus. So when the Freedom Caucus started looking at the bylaws in the Republican caucus, they realized there was not a process for this to happen. There was nothing in the bylaws that would allow them to do that. So in August of last year, the Freedom Caucus wrote up a letter and sent it to Chairman Parker and requested that he call a meeting of the Republican caucus so that they could start having talks, so that they could amend their bylaws to set this procedure in place. All of the Freedom Caucus members signed it, plus 2 other members of the House. And a lot of people surprised, Chan Parker agreed and called the meeting. And since last September through now, they'd had several meetings. And if you pay attention, then you know last week, a couple weeks ago, the caucus actually met and they selected their candidate in the caucus. That is huge. That hasn't happened before. So, I mean, and now they will take that candidate to the floor. So if the Democrats wanted to come up with a candidate at the last minute from the Democrats, they could. But the Republicans have said this is going to be our candidate for speaker as a united Republican caucus. So that was a huge thing too.
They actually started that at the end of the last, or literally at the end of the last session, when the session was finally closed, the special session was finally closed. Then the very next morning, the caucus met. Strauss and all of his henchmen and henchwomen showed up, and the discussions began even before they went home after the 2017 session, Teresa.
Right, that's right. And the caucus, the Freedom Caucus, had written that letter prior to that, getting that meeting. That meeting would not have happened if the Freedom Caucus had not sent that letter. Do
you know any background that happened, Teresa, within the caucus? Because I got to be honest with you, there's a whole bunch of us out here. We were waiting for a Freedom Caucus candidate to be floated. We waited for a trial balloon from a Freedom Caucus candidate. We heard from all kind of people, from Drew Darby and Travis Clardy and Ford Price and all these who we certainly hope would never have Dr. John Zerwas, who's about as rhinoceros as you can possibly get. He might as well be a Democrat. I'm like, if Zerwas becomes speaker, they might as well elect Sarah Davis to be speaker of the House. But these are the people that were being floated out there, the trial balloons, to see how, I guess, the public and the rest of the Republican caucus would respond. But we never got that that Freedom Caucus name floated out there for us. Some of us were hoping for the name of Rinaldi. Certainly after the 2017 session, there were those of us that were hoping and believing that Schaefer was going to rise to the top as the potential Freedom Caucus candidate for the speaker. Whatever happened? Because we never got any names even trial ballooned out of the Freedom Caucus, Teresa.
Like you, and at that time I was not working for the Freedom Caucus, so I heard all those rumors too. To be able to be the candidate for the Republican caucus, you have to get 76 votes. There's 12 people in the Freedom Caucus, and as you said earlier, those Freedom Caucus members were not looked upon very favorably by most of the Republican House reps. So, it was probably kicked around, but then when you come to reality and you think, is there a pathway to victory? There probably wasn't for a Freedom Caucus member. So, and I was not privy to those conversations, so I just want to make that clear. But what I would think is that they decided to say, okay, where can we as a group best put our efforts behind a person? But like I said, the group didn't endorse anybody, but individual members did. So what's the best way for us to further what we need to do? And it came out that they supported one of the names, Representative Bonin. It would have been great to have a Speaker Rinaldi or Speaker Schaefer, but I don't think the votes would have been there for that to happen.
True enough. I wish the pressure would have been, at least the pressure would have been applied, because I think if one of those names had been floated, as was the case when Scott Turner threw his name into the ring in 2015, there would have been that bubbling up, that stirring from the grassroots, as it was with Scott Turner, and representatives literally had to go against the wishes of their own constituents, executive committees passing resolutions in favor of Scott Turner being elected, and those representatives going against those resolutions of endorsement. It puts a lot of pressure on them. One of the things that I've focused on, Teresa, since Joe Strauss grabbed the gavel in 2009, was the number of Democrats that he was willingly appointing to committee chairmanships. In all of his sessions as Speaker, fully 1/3 of the committee chairmanships would be given to Democrats, when obviously the voters of Texas, especially the Republican base, has completely rebuffed or repudiated the policies, principles, and practices of the Democratic Party. Always troubled me. And then, of course, no Freedom Caucus guys or gals were going to get committee chairmanships. They didn't get any vice chairmanships, I don't believe. Hopefully that'll change with the new speaker coming in, that some of these guys with as much talent as they do have, maybe not a whole lot of seniority, but a lot of talent, maybe they'll get some committee chairmanships this time around, Teresa.
Yeah, that's what we're hoping. We are hopeful for that. And I guess, we'll know shortly. Yeah, we are hoping for that.
We're out of time, Teresa. Final words from you. How would you like the attendees of the conference to walk away remembering what? What is the overall number one overarching thought that they should be walking away from this workshop with, as far as the Freedom Caucus wants them to walk away with?
These guys and gal are down there for y'all. They are standing on principle, the principles of liberty and freedom, and they want to hear from you. Just, like I said, if you have anything, please get in touch with me and reach out to me. Anything I can help you with, I'm here to help you. And just, if you have any concerns, get in touch with them.
Teresa, why don't you give your contact information one more time?
Okay, if you need to get in touch with me, it's info@freedomfortexas.com. And I have a phone number here, and I'm trying to see what it is because I don't have it memorized yet. That's pretty bad. Let's see if I can see it. It's 512-537-4466. That's 512-537-4466 if you want to call me on the phone. I'd be happy to talk with you or help you in any way I can.
And she's outstanding. Teresa Beckmeyer is well known throughout the Texas Liberty Movement and very well respected, a hard worker. Teresa, perfect for the job. Congratulations. Thank you for coming and talking with us. You're absolutely fabulous. And let's see here. Mark Hewitt wanted to thank you, Teresa, and me for all the information. And on behalf of Teresa, I want to say you're very welcome. Susan said thank you as well. A lot of thank yous from James in the chat room. Guys, we're not done with the Legislative Action Workshop. Now, since last Friday, it's been a string of outstanding guests from George Constantinides and Jake Provincier from UKIP and Montreal, Quebec, respectfully, international panelist. Don Tier was with us. David Thomas Roberts was with us. Jerry Patterson, former land commissioner, and Daniel Miller spoke on the Alamo a couple of nights ago. Previously mentioned, Rachel Malone, Gun Owners of America, the Texas chapter's executive director, was in last night and gave a 2-hour sterling presentation on how to get up to the Pink Dome and make your voice heard through committee hearings. She was outstanding, completely outstanding. And the reason I'm telling you all of these things is because if you missed any of the sessions, every single one of them is on video and archived at the Texas Nationalist Movement's website, tnm.me/TNMLAW, TNM Law, TNM Legislative Action Workshop. Go to the page, click on the video archive button. It's right there. You can't miss it. And every single session is there. If you missed any, you missed some real gems. True experts, passionate about their subject matter, and they came through with flying colors. They knocked it out of the park, every single one of them. And we're not done yet. January 3rd, State Representative Jonathan Stickland is scheduled and confirmed. Couldn't get him in this string of days along with State Representative Steve Toth. We can give him a little grace. We can give him a little slack. This is the early filing period, and they're ramping up for the 2019 session. But we do have the big stick scheduled for January 3. So if you want to attend that one, or when we get Steve Toth locked in, you still got to go to tnm.me/TNMLAW to get your unique URL link to those sessions to reserve your seat in that conference room. It will come to you via email. Also, membership to the TNM, if you're not a member, obviously go to tnm.me or ragingelephants.radio.com. Click the link for membership, $18.36 to join the preeminent organization on the globe advocating for a free and independent Republic of Texas. I'm a member, a proud member, and a lot of this mess that we're seeing in the United States, the only way out is out. That's what I like to say. Many of you know I'm the president and CEO of Raging Elephants Radio, and I want to ask you to download the Raging Elephants Radio app. Help us beat the censorship of the big tech companies. The best way for us to give you liberty-biased news, information, and commentary that you can trust is for us to have direct access to you, and that comes through the RER app. Find it on your app store and in Google Play. Also, go to the website and sign up for our email. Get rid of the middlemen, get rid of the big tech companies. Let's get this information liberty-driven, liberty-biased, we're transparent about it, information to you so that you can be a much more informed and active member of the Liberty electorate here in Texas. Thanks so much for joining us. We'll see you on the 3rd. Keep your eye on your email inbox for other notifications dealing with Legislative Action Workshop and other actions by the Texas Nationalist Movement. I'm Apostle Claver T. Kamau Imani of RagingElephantsRadio.com, the rebellious voice of Texas Liberty. I'm the Christian politician, your ultra-conservative soul brother, and my enemies under the Pink Dome call me the Purifier, and I like it. From Houston, may the Lord Jesus bless you, May the Lord Jesus bless the future independent, sovereign Republic of Texas.